Hello and welcome back to the OTB channel. Now it's been almost 2 years since I took a look at the LeftWM window manager. It's a tiling window manager written in Rust. At the time I was quite impressed, but it was very much at the early stages of development. Well, development has been continuing, so I thought it was high time to catch up with it and see exactly where it's got to. See you after the intro. Okay, welcome back. So I thought it was high time to do another tiling window manager video. And although most of you are aware my preference is for TWM, that's probably my favourite window manager, I do try and stay abreast with other window managers out there. One of them is LeftWM, another is i3, and another is Spectre WM. All have their strengths and weaknesses, and I've intermittently used all of them at one point or another over the last few years. I noticed though that LeftWM has recently gone to a 0.4 release, and over the last couple of years there's been quite a lot of development, so it's high time we had a look at it. Just to kind of give you an idea of what LeftWM is all about, you know it's written in Rust. It's a dynamic tiler, so it's very similar to xmonad, qtile, TWM in that sense, although the way it manages its workspaces is just like xmonad and qtile. So the workspaces are shared between the monitors. And if you opened up, say, an application on workspace 2 on monitor 1, and then on monitor 2 you move to workspace 2, the application that you'd opened up on workspace 2 will move over to monitor 2. So it's a little strange when you first try and get used to it, but it's a sort of principle that's used by a lot of window managers. TWM is different to that in as much as it has independent workspaces per monitor, and personally I think I prefer that. But LeftWM is a pretty solid window manager. We heard quite a lot about it in the last couple of years, but it seems to have gone pretty quiet. And I don't know why, because it's a solid offering, it's easy to configure, it doesn't present you with, code that's difficult to interpret, which is my problem with qtile and xmonad. It's easy to edit, and updates don't tend to wreck your configuration. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to start off by going to a virtual machine, the Salix OS virtual machine I created in the last video, and we'll do an installation, and then from there we will look at my main installation on this Arch machine and have a chat and see what we think. Okay, so to start off with, we're going to install LeftWM, and just by way of illustration, I'm using the virtual machine that I created for my Salix OS video a few weeks ago. So you can see the Salix OS XFCE here, and first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the LeftWM GitHub page, and fairly straightforward, just do a search for it in Google, and you will see here that it goes through the various ways that you can install. Ideally, you just install it with your package manager. Surprisingly though, there are relatively few distros that seem to have it in their standard repos. Gentoo has it, Arch Linux has it, although it's in the AUR, it's not in the standard repos. Fedora has it in the COPR, but again, not in the standard repos. NetBSD has it, and Void has it. So it's not that common. And because of this, I tend to avoid the AUR and the Fedora COPR, and I tend to go for the cargo install, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. You have got another option as well, of course. You could just do a Git clone of this repo, and it's pretty easy to build, to be honest. You simply cd into the Git clone, you do a cargo build -- release. You then essentially install the binaries to USR bin, and you copy a desktop file to USR share X sessions so that LeftWM shows up in your login manager. So package management, or your package manager, cargo, or a manual installation. It's up to you which way you go. I tend to use a cargo install simply because it works on every single distro that I've installed it on so far. You will, of course, need to install Rust and cargo. They may be separate packages or all part of one package. That will depend on your distro. And then you take it from there, basically. I would suggest that even if you do a cargo install, you still do a Git clone of this repo anyway. And there's two reasons for that. One, they have some example themes in the repo that you'll be able to install right from the get-go. And secondly, they do have, if I can just find it, just bear with me 1 minute, a LeftWM desktop file. And you'll need to drop that into USR share X sessions anyway, so that it shows up in your login manager. It's probably already going to have one of these if you manage to install it from your package manager, but not if you do a manual install like I'm going to do. Okay, so just a quick caveat. LeftWM has recently moved to version 4. Now, version 4 relies on a minimum version of Rust, and I believe it's 1.59. Not all distros are going to have Rust 1.59 installed. If that's the case with your distro, and it's certainly the case with Slackware 15, you're going to have to use an older branch. That's easy enough to do. On the GitHub page here, you can see it's currently on main. All you need to do is drop that main button down and go to the 0.3 branch and Git clone that branch. And you will get the version that's kind of one behind your current, and that seems to work fine on everything. As I said, Slackware is currently running 1.58 Rust, so I wasn't able to get LeftWM version 4 compiled, which is a shame, but you know, it is what it is. However, I have to say that I did come across a little bit of a quandary, because I did uninstall Slackware's version of Rust, and I compiled and installed the latest version of myself. And I was then able to compile LeftWM 0.4, but for some reason it would not launch either from a login manager or from StartX. I'm going through the error messages at the moment. I'm sure it's a missing dependency, but if anybody can give me a clue, please do so. But anyway, branch 0.3.0 works fine. And all you need to do, if you're going to install by cargo, like I would do, is you simply open a terminal as user, and you would do cargo install LeftWM, if you're going to install the latest version. If you want to install 0.3.0, it's pretty much the same. You just put in a version number, cargo install version 0.3.0 LeftWM, and that will install that particular version for you. What this will do is it will install LeftWM locally. So if I was to open up my home folder here, I've just done this. It's created a directory, a .cargo directory. And in that .cargo directory, you have a bin directory, and there's LeftWM. So it's installed locally on your machine. Now, in order to launch that, you have to make sure that that directory is in your path. So another thing you're going to need to do is you are going to need to create a .profile file, and I've got one here, where you are going to need to export the path home.cargo/bin. There was already a .profile on Salix. I've simply added this second line with all the exports that I normally include, but the important one is this, home.cargo.bin. So, you've dropped your desktop file, hopefully, in USR Share X sessions. You've created a .profile. Well, the next thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you're not just starting with a blank screen. So, create in the config directory, let me just open it, a LeftWM directory, and you can see I've created one there. Create a themes directory, and what I've actually done is I've gone to the clone of that Git repo and I've copied in two of the themes, Basic Lemon Bar and Basic Polybar. I'm using Basic Polybar at the moment, and the current directory you see there is just a symlink to Basic Polybar. I'll show you that now actually. So if I go to cd config LeftWM themes and I do an ls-la, you can see that the current directory is just a symlink to the Basic Polybar. The wonderful thing about LeftWM is it's really easy to change themes. All you need to do is to delete that symlink and then recreate it pointing to whichever theme directory you want it to point to. And there is a community page with loads of themes, so you've got quite a lot to start you off with. Anyway, let's log out of this and log back in, and hopefully we're going to get the Basic Polybar LeftWM up and running, and you can see exactly what it looks like. Right, so you should be able to see in front of you now, LeftWM has indeed launched when we logged into it. This is the Basic Polybar theme, and you can see you've got your workspaces up on the left, you've got a few modules on the right, and I believe Super Shift Enter will get me Alacrity launching automatically, and it has. And if I go in the terminal to .config LeftWM, you will see within that directory there is in fact a file called config.toml. Now, that doesn't need to be created before you first launch LeftWM. It will auto-generate the first time that you log in. And if you have a look at this very quickly, it's pretty much a simple plain text file that declares all of your key bindings. So you can customize everything, to your heart's content. So with all of that said, let's come out of this virtual machine now. Let's go across to my Arch workstation. I'll show you my actual installation. Right, so we're back to my Arch desktop, and you can see the actual version of LeftWM that I'm running here on your screen. I'm running the 0.4.0 version in Arch because it's got the latest version of Rust. And you can see what it looks like. I've modified the Basic Polybar theme that I just kind of copied across from the Git Clone page. And I've changed Polybar a little bit. I've changed some of the colors around. I've got some of the nerd icons over there. I've changed the modules in Polybar and a few little bits and pieces. One of the things I like about LeftWM is just how easy these themes are to change. If I go to the themes directory, the Basic Polybar directory, there's a number of files in here. Now, yes, most of them are written in Rust, but they're quite understandable. You'll see that there's an up script, which is basically a bash script to tell LeftWM what to do when it launches. There's a general theme file. There's a template liquid. There's a polybar configuration and a couple of saved versions of that. There's a down script and there's a change to tag script. And let's just open up the up script in Genie so you can see what I've actually done. So I will close this. So starting off with the up script, you can see it's just a bash script, which tells LeftWM, which scripts to look at. It tells it to start PyCom. It tells it to look at the theme file, theme.ron. And I've used the up script as a sort of auto start script as well. So I've added some startup applications here. I've got a little script in my bin file which just sets the screen resolution. I'm setting my poll kit. I'm starting nitrogen, and I'm setting a UK keyboard. And that's pretty much all I've done. The only changes that I've made. The theme that you copy across from the GitLab page is hard-coded to a particular wallpaper. Well, I just want to set my wallpaper through nitrogen, so that's nice and easy. You've got something called template liquid, which when you first look at it, you think, what on earth is that about? But actually, it just controls the colors of your tags up here. And if you look at the, tag mine, foreground color, background color, tag urgent, foreground color, background color, tag visible, foreground, background, etc., etc. Play around with the different colors. Just use the hex numbers and you'll see what it does. There's a sizes.liquid file. I'm not entirely sure what that does, apart from the fact that it seems to have something to do with the workspaces. The workspaces up here on Polybar are not controlled by the Polybar config, by the way. They seem to be controlled by some of these files in the theme directory. There's then a down script, which is basically just telling LeftWM to unload PyCom and unload Polybar. Change to tag. Again, I'm not entirely sure what that does, but the most important part for me is the Polybar config. If you've never used Polybar before, I do have a video on it not so long ago when I talked through the basics, but essentially what you're interested in is this section called bar/bar base. I've simply added some of the Ubuntu Mono Nerd fonts to it, as well as Font Awesome. And I've added some additional, as I go down here, some modules that are using some of my custom scripts. And you simply add them to the bar by adding them to the modules right bar there. So, all pretty straightforward, to be honest. You can play around with these theme files until you get just the look that you want. There are some changes that it's as well to be aware of between 0.3 and 0.4. One of the first changes that you will notice is within the theme directories itself, you have a theme file. Under the old system, 0.3.0, it was called theme.toml. Under the new system, it's called theme.ron. So they've done this sweeping change in 0.4.0 to change the toml files to .ron files. I'm not sure what practical difference it makes, but there is a slight difference in terms of basically the format. So if you look at this one, the theme toml, you've simply got a few entries in there with some default colors for your border, floating, focused, etc. But each entry has an equal sign and you haven't got any brackets. Going over to the other side, you're looking at these obviously in Meld. You've got all the same entries, but rather than the equal sign, there's a colon there. And at the beginning of the overall entry, it opens with a rounded bracket and it closes with a rounded bracket. And that's pretty much all there is to that. There's also a change to your configuration file. The one that you saw auto-generated on the virtual machine was a config.toml file, which is this one on the left. And you can see that it follows a pretty straightforward format, really, with all your keybinds listed, and it should be obvious what the format is. When they've changed these over to theme.ron, they've almost simplified the format of it. And it's still the same commands. It's just in a slightly different, it's put in a slightly different way. Luckily, if you've got an old config.toml and you want to convert it, it couldn't be easier, and I did this. You simply run the command LeftWM check -- migrate -toml -to -ron, and it creates a theme.ron file for you next to your toml file, so you can actually use that. And I found that the conversion went pretty well. Okay, so coming back to it, I mean, LeftWM is just a tiling window manager based on the same sort of method as xmonad, qtile, and spectre-wm. You can add lots of different windows. It's a dynamic tiler, so you don't have to place them. It automatically places them in a particular layout. And you can see here, by default, it's a master and stack layout. Having said that, I can scroll through the different layouts, and there are many. I can make them bigger, make them smaller. I can do a single page, full screen. I can go back to master and stack. You see exactly how it works. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So you can do everything that you would expect with a tiling window manager. What has been added over the last couple of years is scratch pads, which is nice. So I've got various scratch pads here. It took me a little while to figure out how these actually worked, but you can see I've now got them working quite well, and I'm really happy with it, to be honest. Certainly worth giving it a go. I would recommend it. It's been pretty stable for me for the last 2 years. And as development has continued, they seem to have knocked some of the rough edges off, and it feels pretty solid now. So it's another window manager. It's well worth giving a go. If you like a window manager that can be themed easily, you don't want to start fighting some language that you've got no idea about, and you want something that's easy to install, it may well be for you. Let's go and have a chat. So that's LeftWM. I'm quite impressed with it. The constant development over the last couple of years seems to have resulted in lots of additional features being added. And in fact, you can see that in terms of the configuration file, how many options there are now. I particularly appreciate the addition of scratch pads. And I think it pretty much does just about everything any other tiler does. Yes, there's always going to be some that do absolutely everything, xmonad being one. But as far as its functionality is concerned, it does as much as I need a tiler to actually do. And I would certainly recommend it. It's worth taking a look at. I know a few people looked at it a couple of years ago when I did, and they thought it was a bit basic. I don't think it deserves to be called basic anymore. I think it's really coming on. And the advantage is that, okay, it's still not in that many distros package managers, but installing it is really simple. So that's it for today, guys. I'm sorry that the videos are a bit intermittent and all over the place. that's likely to continue for the time being. Unfortunately, myself and my wife have both suffered from pretty nasty health issues over the last few weeks, and that's continuing at the moment, I'm afraid. But we will see how it goes, and I will put out as many videos as I can. That's all I want to say for the time being. Guys, have a great weekend, and I'll see you next time.